Hi everybody, I'm Catherine Elizabeth from CatBeth Art. Welcome to my art channel. This is where my creativity flows, and I'm so happy to have you here today. Today's episode is all about experimentation. I'm not so much looking at the color palette or even the composition, but with today's episode, what I am going to be looking at is cell activator use. I'm going to run a series of experiments that looks at the layering of the cell activators, whether I use one or two. And the two colors I'm going to be using are black and white. So let's take you down to the studio and see how the first experiment went. For my cell activator, I use Australian Floetrol. The paint that I use to mix it is Amsterdam. For black, I use lamp black, and for the white, I use titanium white. All of my films here are sped up in an effort to save you some time. What's important here is looking at the cell activators that I use, the combinations of cell activators that I use, and how I place them on the canvas. I placed the cell activators on this first painting in the way that I typically do, and in the amount that I typically do for the size of the painting, just to get a kind of a baseline from where to go after this. I am struggling with that really dark center again, trying to move it around, trying my best to not have it be the focal point. I want the colors to shine, not the cell activator, and it's just kind of lumped there. I'm trying tilting it to see if I can get some of it off. I'm not really successful at that. Stay tuned for the dried result. And here's the dried result of that experiment. And so, as you probably noted for experiment 1, I layered these cell activators in the way that I typically do. And in that method, I tend to end up with a cluster of black right in the center. Or if I manage to tilt it off, it'll be off somewhere here. But I really don't want to have to struggle with that, because that forces a composition into something that I might not want. And so the purpose of this was to try to see if there's a way that I could lay the cell activators down and not have to keep struggling like that. And so with this experiment, I laid the cell activators in the way that I typically lay them, and which results in this sort of heavy black area right here, this really dark area that I'm not too fond of in these paintings that I'm trying to achieve. So I wanted this to be a kind of a baseline. Here we go. In terms of orientation, as I said earlier, I'm not really too concerned about the composition, but I can't help but look at the composition anyway. In any of these orientations, where I find the best one is this right here. And I can't tell you why, I just do. What do you think? All right. So now let's get down to the studio again and look at experiment 2 and see what happens with that one. For part 2, I am using again a used canvas, and actually this is my second go on this canvas. The first one was a fail. What I wanted to do this time was to just use the white cell activator. As I'm blowing, I can see a lot of the white there, kind of clumped up in the middle. Not terribly fond of that. It is producing decent cells, I suppose. Not my favorite though. Again, I'm not paying too much attention to composition because I really want to see what the cell activators do. And stay tuned for the dried result of this one. So for experiment 2, I just used the white. Now I've been having problems lately with my white cell activators. It's not wanting to cell up for some reason. I don't really know why, but I thought I'd give it a try and see what happened. So you might have noticed with this one that this was a second attempt. The first attempt, I think there was just too much white there. I might have used a little bit too much pillow paint. I'm not really sure what it was, but it was all too pale. Not a lot of color action going on, and so I poured over it again. Not the best painting in the world. I'm not thrilled with it, but it was a second go and it did show me what it could do. So here's the final result of this one. There was so much white in the middle that I thought I'd just take the skewer as I was spinning the painting around, take the skewer and just go out like that. And that's why you see these circles right here. Not really terribly concerned about the composition, just looking at what the cell activators would do. And this is what it did for me. For this third painting, I'm going back to black and white. I'm putting the white down first and just a couple of sprinkles of the black to try to tame down some of that blackness that follows me. As I try to blow out some of that black cell activator, I'm noticing these really interesting lines that are forming. And here I am just trying to center the paint again. Give it a spin. And stay tuned for the dried result. So with the results of experiment 2, I realized that probably white cell activator alone isn't going to handle it. It just adds too much white in there, and it's like the paint doesn't know what to do with it. So I thought I really do need some dark cell activator to provide some kind of contrast. And so with this one, I laid the white cell activator first, and then I just did a few drops of the black, being very careful not to add too much, because I didn't really want to have all of that black there, just a touch of it. And this is the dried result of that experiment. I like this one better. I think that the white cell activator didn't overtake the painting too much. It let the colors shine through. And the black cell activator just added a bit of accent. And in fact, let's see if you see what I see. What do you think? Well, what I see is a butterfly that's landed. Here's the body of the butterfly, here are the legs, and here are the wings. So it's a side view of a butterfly. As I said before, I wasn't really too concerned about composition, but I was delighted to see this little critter show up. Okay, so let's move on to experiment 4, the final experiment. For this fourth painting, I'm going to again use the black and white cell activator, and I'll be trying to layer that a little bit differently. I put the dots of black cell activator first and the white on top. Again, I'm liking that the black isn't taking over. I'm not too worried about composition again. I just want to see what the cell activator does. So I'm just moving the paint around to distribute the weight. And stay tuned for the dried result. Okay, so with experiment 4, what I decided to do this time was to lay the black down first and top it off with some white. And with the black, again, I'm being very mindful not to overdo it. So I put a few dots around and then I poured the white on top. And what happened? Does anything show up for you here? What do you see? Well, if you look very carefully, you might see a bird. Profile of a bird. Here's the body. Here's the beautiful plumage. And here is the beak area, right here. Here's the flora. Yeah, I see a little bird. These might be the legs. I don't know. It's interpretive art, right? But I'm really happy with the amount of black that shows up in this one. I'm really happy with the way the white turned out. So, what did I learn? Well, I learned that there are different ways that you can lay down your cell activator and come up with totally different results. Of course, it depends on also the way the paint is blown out, the way it's tilted, maybe even the consistency of the paint. I don't know, there's so many things that are involved. But I know that cell activator, the way it's laid and the layers, and whether you use one or two, well, it really does matter. And so, yeah, I think I'm ready to experiment on larger canvases, new canvases. When I'm trying out a new color palette or I'm running experiments like this, I like to either use small canvases or ones that I've used before, so recycle old canvases, because I'm really not so much interested in the final outcome of the painting, although it's nice when it turns out nice. But what I'm more interested in is how the colors blend. Do they move nicely? How the cell activators interact with the various colors? Does the layering of the cell activators make a difference, and so forth? And so I'm really looking to see what I will get. So I save the larger canvases for something that I really want to produce something of value. So I'm done with this color palette. I have a new color palette all ready to go. I'm excited to show you that when the time comes. Until then, bye.